Hello students, welcome to economics class. Today we are going to discuss about chapter 3, that is features, problems and policies of agriculture. In this chapter we will discuss Indian agriculture sector in detail. Now what's about the key points? In this very chapter we will discuss about importance of agriculture in the Indian economy, features of Indian agriculture, problems of Indian agriculture, agrarian reforms, and achievements of agrarian reforms, that is, Green Revolution in India. The first topic is importance of agriculture in Indian economy. Agriculture refers to a combined act of farming along with cattle rearing. Agriculture sector in India is so important that Indian economy is oftenly called as an agrarian economy. Now, its importance, first and the most important importance is that its contribution to GDP. Agriculture makes a significant contribution to GDP in India. Presently, about 18% of GDP comes from agriculture sector. Earlier, the contribution of agriculture sector in GDP was 51% and now it has reduced to 17.4%. This decline indicates the relatively faster growth of secondary and tertiary sectors of the economy. This is known as structural transformation of an economy. This is very important that in the initial stages of development, the contribution of agriculture sector in GDP is more as compared to tertiary and secondary sector. But when when the growth process takes place, the contribution of agriculture sector in GDP start to decline. On the other hand, the contribution of tertiary sector and secondary sector start to increase in GDP. Now, what's about the second one? This is supply of wage goods like wheat, rice, pulses, maize, bajra, oilseeds, etc. Sources of employment. Agriculture sector is the main occupation of workforce living in India. Approximately 50% of workforce is still engaged directly or indirectly in agriculture sector. Supply of raw material to agro-based industries. Agriculture supplies materials like cotton for the textile industry, oil seeds for the oil industry, and sugarcane for the sugar industry. Hence, leads to the development of agro-based industries. Sources of demand for the industrial goods. Industrial goods, particularly the capital goods like tractors, harvesters, machine tools, etc., are demanded exclusively by the agriculture sector. That's why agriculture sector gives prosperity to the industrial sector. Means industrial demand for industrial goods also depends on a developed agriculture sector. Now, contribution to international trade. Agriculture goods like tea, jute, cashew nuts, tobacco, coffee, and spices are the main components of India's exports. Hence, agriculture sector is a rich source of foreign exchange, and foreign exchange is very important for an economy. We will discuss about the concept of foreign exchange in our macroeconomics. Now, contribution to domestic trade. Agriculture also plays a significant role in the country's domestic trade. A huge expenditure in India is incurred on the purchase of farm products needed by more than a billion of people in the country. Next, this is support to the transport industry. Agriculture in India offers crucial support to the transport industry because both railways and roadways are the bulk carriers of farm products in India. Wealth of the nation, a significant component of country's wealth belongs to agriculture sector in terms of fixed assets. Land occupies the highest rank in India. Dear students, land is also a very important fixed asset. In crux, we can say agriculture plays a primary role in India. That is, it leads to the development of all the sectors of economy. As we have already studied, that a developed agriculture sector leads to the development of industrial sector and development of tertiary sector. That's why it is very important to have a developed agriculture sector. Next topic, this is features and problems of Indian agriculture. The very first feature as well as problem of Indian agriculture is low productivity. Now what's about the productivity? Productivity means output per hectare of land. It is extremely low in India as compared to the advanced nations in the world. For example, the productivity of rice in India is 3.6 tons per hectare of land against the productivity of 6.8 tons of output per hectare of land in China. Similarly, it is very low in case of wheat and maize and other crops also. Next, this is about the disguised unemployment. Disguised unemployment, it is not a new concept. You have already studied about this concept in 9th and 10th classes. Now, disguised unemployment is a situation when the number of persons engaged on a piece of land is higher than what is actually needed. Disguised unemployment is the distinct characteristics of Indian agriculture and it reflects backwardness and poverty in rural India. Next, this is dependence on rainfall. Agriculture in India is heavily dependent on rainfall. Accordingly, crop production is highly vulnerable. Good rainfall ensures good crop and bad rainfall means bad crop. Now, subsistence farming. It means the primary objective of the farmer is to secure subsistence for his family, that is not to earn profits. Subsistence agriculture is again very common in India and due to this agriculture sector is not able to generate marketable surplus. Lack of modern inputs. Modern inputs like chemical fertilizers, insecticides and pesticides are not widely used. It is due to massive poverty among farming population. Small and scattered holdings. Holdings in India are not only small but scattered as well. Scattered means fragmented. Small holdings do not allow the use of modern technology and scattered holding increases the cost of management. It contributes to backwardness of farming population. Next, this is landlord-tenant conflict. Huge areas are cultivated by the tenants who are not the owners of the soil, but maximum of the revenue is appropriated, that is taken by the owners, that is the landlords, and tenants often get the bare minimum wages. It increases the conflict and gap between the landlord and actual tenants, and because of this very conflict the tenants do not have any interest as well as any surplus that can be used for the development of land. Now, lack of organized marketing system. A vast variety of the small farmers continue to sell their output in the local markets at reduced rates to a large extent. This is their compulsion, that is, they are indulged in distress sales. Distress sales refers to a practice of selling the farm products to money lenders by the farmers to pay off their debts, and because of this distress sales the farmers are not capable to get proper return of their crops. Now, what's about the agrarian reforms? With a view to tackling the problems of Indian agriculture, the government has taken a series of reforms since independence. These reform measures are popularly known as agrarian reforms, and these are broadly classified into three categories. One is technical reforms, second is institutional reforms, also known as land reforms, and third is general reforms. Now we will discuss these three reforms one by one. First, we have the technical reforms. These reforms are basically related with modern techniques, that is advancement in technology, like use of yielding variety, that is miracle seeds, use of chemical fertilizers, use of insecticides and pesticides for crop protection, scientific farm management practices, and mechanized means of cultivation. So technical reforms includes the reforms that are basically related with advancement in technology. Now, institutional reforms, also known as land reforms. Dear students, this is very important. You are to prepare these reforms in a proper manner, because generally questions related with land reforms are asked in question paper. Now, abolition of intermediaries, popularly known as jamidars. Ownership rights have been given to those who actually cultivate the soil. Next, regulation of rent to put an end to excessive and illegal exploitation of the cultivators. Rents have been fixed. Generally, rent cannot exceed one third of the value of crop. Now, consolidation of holdings. It is a practice to allot land to the farmers at one place as a replacement for their scattered holdings. We have already discussed that the scattered holdings lead to mismanagement of farming. That's why consolidation of land holding was adopted. It saves the cost of cultivation. By the end of 2004, more than 17 lakh hectares of land was brought under consolidation of land holdings. Next, ceiling on land holdings. Ceiling on holdings is the maximum size of cultivable land holding that an individual or a farm family can own. The surplus land has been resumed by the government and redistributed among smallholders or landless laborers. It is a step towards equality in rural economy. This is very important. It is a step towards equality in rural economy. Now, cooperative farming. Cooperative farming is encouraged to enhance bargaining power of the smallholders. Together, they can buy inputs at a lower price and sell their produce at a higher price. Means cooperative farming is encouraged to enhance the bargaining power of the smallholders, so that the farmers can get best return of their produce. Next, this is about the general reforms. In general reforms, the very first is expansion of irrigation facilities. With a view to raising productivity in agriculture, irrigation facilities have been expanded. Now, irrigation is covering more than about 50% of land under cultivation. Next, provision of credit. Cooperative credit societies have been set up to provide credit to the farmers at low rate of interest. Rural development banks have been established to meet the credit needs of the farmers. Along with these, commercial banks, regional rural banks, and National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development, popularly known as NABARD, were also set up to meet the credit needs of the farmers at the national level. Dear students, we will discuss NABARD in detail in our chapter related with rural development. Again, this is very important. Now, regulated markets and cooperative marketing societies. Regulated markets have been established across all parts of the country with a view to offering remunerative price to the farmers and to protect them against exploitation by the middlemen. Cooperative marketing societies have been established to enhance bargaining power of the farmers in the market. The societies ensure that the farmer's produce is graded and sold only when remunerative prices are available. Next, this is very very important, minimum price support policy. Under this policy, government issues a minimum support price to the farmers for their produce so as to protect them against uncertainty of the market. The government is committed to buy the surplus produce of the farmer at MSP as and when market prices are lower than that. In the situation when the farmers are not capable to sell their produce at minimum support price, it is the responsibility of the government to purchase the entire surplus in order to maintain its buffer stock. And the availability of buffer stock is very very important to alleviate poverty, because we have public distribution system and the efficiency of public distribution system depends on the availability of sufficient buffer stock. Now we will discuss about the achievements of agrarian reforms, especially the policy of Green Revolution. Green Revolution and its achievements. The term green refers to crops and revolution refers to spurt. Therefore, Green Revolution means a spurt in crop production. It was started in the year 1966-68. In this year, the production of food grain was increased by nearly 25% and India became self-sufficient in the production of food grains, and it was the need of the day to increase production of food grains. Now, phases of Green Revolution. Green Revolution is studied in two phases. The very first one, mid 60s to 70s. During this phase, scope of Green Revolution was restricted just to wheat and rice growing regions of the country. These included the states of Punjab, Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu. That's why the scope of Green Revolution was very limited. Phase 2, that is mid 70s to 80s. It is during this phase the impact of Green Revolution became widespread, covering most of the areas of the country, and large number of crops like wheat, rice, bajra, maize and jawar. Bache, you are to keep in your mind that 5 crops were taken under phase 2 like wheat, rice, bajra, maize and jawar. Now, impact of Green Revolution. The very first and the most important, spurt in crop productivity. There has been a substantial jump in crop productivity. The productivity of wheat was estimated at 3500 kilograms per hectare in the year 2016-17 as compared to 600 kg per hectare in 1951. The similar increase in productivity was depicted from rice, maize, bajra, etc. Next, there is a substantial rise in acreage, that is area under cultivation. Use of HIV seeds and chemical fertilizers has reduced the time lag between the sowing and harvesting of crops. This has led to a substantial rise in gross area under cultivation, and because of increase in acreage, the productivity as well as production of agriculture produce has remarkably increased. Now, shift from subsistence farming to commercial farming. We have already discussed about the concept of subsistence farming and the commercial farming. A substantial rise in output has started generated marketable surplus. Now, what's about marketable surplus? Again, a very important concept. Marketable surplus refers to surplus of farmer's output over and above his own farm consumption, that is increase the income level of farmers. Now, shift in farmers' outlook from subsistence farming to commercialization of agriculture, and because of this change in outlook, the growth of agriculture sector has happened. Now, the production of agricultural goods has increased remarkably. Now, self-sufficiency in food grains, increase in crop production has been so remarkable that India has started maintaining buffer stocks of food grains. These stocks are used during period of low farm supply. In crux, we can say due to technical, institutional and general reforms, India has achieved a substantial rise in crop production through increase in productivity as well as increase in acreage. Now, what's about the limitations of green revolution? We have already discussed about these limitations. First is limited crops. The increase in output is confined mainly to the production of food grains, that is wheat and rice. There has been no remarkable increase in production of pulses and commercial crops like jute, cotton, tea, etc. Uneven spread. It was confined mainly to the states like Punjab, Haryana, Maharashtra, and Tamil Nadu. But in Bihar, eastern UP, Madhya Pradesh, and Odisha had relatively insignificant impact. Now, limited farming population. The bulk of farming population in India is consisting of small and marginal farmers, and the gains of green revolution was taken by the rich farmers only. Now, need for second green revolution. It is an undistributed fact that the gains of green revolution have started shrinking. Following observation would prove the need for yet another green revolution in India. Our productivity standards are extremely low as compared to other nations. Our food grain stocks are at the point of uncertainty. Most farmers in India continue to face uncertainties of the weather. The farmers continue to be exposed to uncertainty of the market. Loan waivers are becoming a recurring compulsion. So, because of these reasons, India need for second green revolution. Now, there is one more an important topic. This is related with a debate over agricultural subsidies. Means, should agricultural subsidies be continued or be stopped? Now, first we will discuss about arguments against the subsidy. Arguments against the continuation of subsidy. The very first one. The objective of subsidy was to enable farmers to achieve economic viability of new technology. Now the subsidy has done its job, that's why it should no longer be offered. Secondly, subsidies on fertilizers are meant to help the farmers, but in reality, offering subsidies on purchase of fertilizers are just helping the fertilizer industry. Even rich farmers continue to enjoy the benefits of subsidy. Means the benefits of subsidy is taken more by the rich farmers as compared to the poor farmers. Next, subsidies beyond a limit encourage wasteful use of the resources. For example, the provision of free electricity to the farmers in Punjab has encouraged the use of electricity for non-productive purposes like domestic consumption, etc. So these are the arguments against the subsidy, that subsidy should not be continued. Now, arguments in favor of the subsidy. Those who are in favor of subsidies argues that bulk of the farmer population in India is poor and withdrawal of subsidies would expose them to the uncertainty in the market even for purchasing the essential inputs. That's why it is very important to continue the subsidies. Now, withdrawal of subsidies would enlarge the gulf between the rich and the poor farmers, hence the objective of equity would be defeated. Means it is suggested that subsidies in agriculture sector should be continued. Dear students, if the question is related with the positive or points in favor, you should give only the points which are in favor of the continuation of subsidies. If the question is related against the subsidies, you should give the points which indicates arguments against the subsidies. Dear students, with this your topic is over. You are to prepare this topic very carefully, revise the chapter properly, and send me your doubts either on app or in group or to me personally. Here, one thing I want to make it very very clear. Very soon you will have to face unit test, but before unit test on trial basis there will be a written test. Very soon you will be informed about the written test as well as the topics. So dear students, you are advised to prepare the topics properly so that you can perform excellently in your trial tests as well as in unit tests. Okay beta, enjoy your day. Have a wonderful day.